Hey guys, Steve here from Coils and Coins Detecting with another video. Today I thought I'd do an inside video since it's raining so much outside. I can't go out detecting, which is pretty ordinary. But anyway, let's get on with something useful. Today I'm going to talk about the depth indicator on the machine. Both the 800 and 600 has the same indicator capabilities, and they are a very useful tool. It can be said that the depth indicator is only a guide. It's really not always that accurate, but it is a very useful tool if you understand how it works and you utilize it in the right way. So the depth indication accuracy here can be affected by many things. Mainly it's going to be your settings, of course, things like your recovery speed, your sensitivity, the size of the coil you're using, the way you've got your iron bias set up. All these things can affect it. Also the mineralization content in the ground, the amount of water in the ground, whether it's sand, dry or wet sand. All these things can affect how accurate this indicator is. Each arrow indicates a depth of approximately 2 inches or 5 centimeters. So based on that we can go up to 10 inches of depth or 25 centimeters of depth. But the important thing to remember is that this is really only a guide and it's not going to be accurate a lot of the time. I've found in my general metal detecting that it's relatively accurate for a coin-sized object, which I know is a pretty broad statement, but you know, there are objects out there that are around the size, let's say, of a 20-cent piece in Australia or a $1 coin, that kind of size, perhaps up to a penny in Australia. In the US it might be a quarter, perhaps, that kind of thing. You know, that sort of size object, it seems to be fairly accurate, fairly consistent in most cases. Of course, when we go metal detecting, there are loads of targets that are much smaller than that and also much larger than that, and also quite irregular in their shape, and all those things can upset the accuracy of this indicator here. The other things that can upset it are things like the type of soil that you're searching in, the mineralization within that soil, how much water's in that soil, whether it's sand, you know, dry sand, wet sand, or if you're hunting in the surf. All these kinds of things can most definitely upset the accuracy of this indicator. So yeah, the number one thing is it's a guide. It's really only a guide. It gives you some idea. I've found targets that have been much deeper than this guide indicates, and much shallower than this guide indicates, and also accurate to this indicator. So, you know, everything in between, and I'm sure you have too. But as you hunt more, as you dig more targets, as you take notice of not only the tones and the target IDs that are coming up, but things like the indication of depth, you'll start to understand yourself that, you know, this really is pretty loosely defined. It's a guide. But having said all of that, it's a very useful tool, and I'm going to give you guys some tips on how to use this to help you when you're hunting. And I will put a video up after I talk about this a little bit more, just showing one of the ways I use this depth indication guide to work out whether I'm digging a large object or a small object, whether it's, you know, something worthwhile digging or not. At least improve our chances in that regard. So yeah, use it as it's intended. So, you know, I'm not gonna hit a target, it's got 2 bars, and know every single time that it's exactly 4 inches deep. That is not going to happen. What I've found in my hunting is that when you're waving the coil over the target, you're swinging across it, and you hear a double bounce sound. So that's two tones in quick succession, one after the other. And I'm seeing 1 arrow of depth here. That to me is a pretty accurate depth indicator of a very shallow target, along with that double tone. So if you've got a coin that's on the surface or within a couple of inches of the surface and you get that double bounce sound, I'm going to be pretty sure that is accurate. It's within 2 inches of the surface. Also happens within 2 arrows of the surface or 4 inches of the surface. Can happen as well for a larger coin. If you get that double bounce sound, it's going to be within that first 1 or 2 bars of depth. However, if I swing across the target and I get 1 bar of depth, but I'm not getting a double bounce sound, that to me straight away signals that I'm talking about a larger target, even though the machine's telling me it's a surface target or within 2 inches of the surface, and I'm not getting that double bounce sound. To me, that means it's a larger target. And I'll try to explain why that's the case with the small target double bouncing and the large target not double bouncing. So what's happening is, obviously with the metal detector, we've got an electromagnetic signal being pushed down into the ground. If there's a metal object in the ground, that object will absorb that magnetic signal, and it'll actually build up in that target to the point where it then starts to send out its own electromagnetic signal, and that's what the receiver on the coil is seeing, and reporting back to us as a tone and a target ID. Now, when the target's very small, each side of the receiving coil on a double D coil is hitting that and reporting back in quick succession a tone. So you get the 2 tones together on a small target because they can be separated, as it were. Each side of the coil can separate and hear that target independently. But when the target's large, that can't happen because each side of the receiving coil is sensing that target, reading that target at one time, so it can't report 2 different tones. So that's something that you need to understand to work out, well, why is it giving me 2, a double bounce, and why is it only giving me 1? And what I'm going to do is cut to a video where I use that double bounce theory to look for shallow surface coins. So let's go and have a look at that. What you're listening for is this, that double bouncing signal. And no matter what angle you're on, it sounds the same. So what that's telling you, it's a 13, so that's a 10-cent piece signal, and the double bounce is because it's so shallow. And the reason why it gives you 2 tones in quick succession is because each side of the receiving coil is giving you a signal, so you're getting 2 close together signals. So that's what we're listening for, guys. That double bouncing 21 or 22, that's going to be gold coin pretty much 90% of the time. Very little else sounds the same. It's not even buried, that one. Here we go. It's just sitting in the grass. Someone's just dropped that recently. Okay, so this machine's going a bit crazy, but I am inside, so that's why you can see that bouncing around, but it's giving us the arrow. I just want to show that indicator the whole time I'm talking, if I can. Now, the other thing that is a very useful tool is, again, when you've got a large target in the ground that's reporting as shallow. So what I tend to do, if I get 1 bar on the indicator, but I'm only getting 1 tone, I'm not getting that double bounce, what I'll do is lift the coil in the air about 6 to 8 inches above that target, and I'll sweep across the target again. Now, if I don't get a tone at that height off the ground, then that tells me that the target is smaller because I'm out of range of it now. But if I go 6 to 8 inches above that target and I'm still hitting it, and it's still giving me a tone, then I know, pretty sure, that target is much larger than a coin, and it's probably going to be deeper too because I'm still getting it at that range. So that would, to me, mean there's a very good chance it's something like can slaw, a large bit of can slaw, so a large soft drink can or a beer can that's been crushed, or even a whole can in the ground, or a food can or something that's been crushed and it's in the ground, not going to be a coin. So that's a very good tip, and I've done that a lot with my hunting, and I've shown that in videos before, but I'll find a bit of footage of how I've used this, and I'll show that to you now so you can see how it's used. Okay, so here's an interesting one. Here's another target that I don't think is a good target, even though it's ringing up with a very, very solid 21-22. See how the detector's saying it's 1 bar down, but it's not giving a double bounce. And if I lift the coil 6 to 8 inches off the ground, I'm still getting a signal. I believe that's going to be a can, or part of a can. Let's dig it up just so I can show you. Just a sec. Okay, so I've dug the plug. Target's in the bottom of the hole. If we can keep the plug open. There we go. Base of a can, most of a can, crushed up. So that's a dead giveaway for can slaw. If it's a solid 21 and 22, detector saying it's 1 bar from the surface or 2 bars, and it's not double bouncing, then it's not a coin because it's bigger than a coin. And if you lift the coil up off the ground 6 to 8 inches and you're still getting the signal, it's something bigger than a coin, and usually those numbers mean aluminium, so a can. Alright, so hopefully that helps out with your hunting, and it's a tool that you can make use of yourself. The more you do it, the more you'll understand how it works. So anyway, that's something to think about. Just a couple of example targets. This little pendant, zodiac sign Cancer pendant that I found not so long ago. It's quite small. It's about the size of a threepence if you're in Australia, but it's about, I don't know, let's say 12 millimeter diameter, something like that. Probably less. Anyway, this was ringing up in the ground at 4 bars depth. So when I found this, it was I think about a 26 target ID, but there were 4 bars of depth here. So that's telling me 8 inches, right? So I started to, when the target was that high, I'm starting to think maybe it's a silver coin. This is actually, 925 sterling silver, I should say. So it sounded to me like a small silver coin, and it's very much like a small silver coin, as you can see. But I wasn't feeling that it was 4 bars deep, 8 inches deep, and so I still dug it in that way around it, gave it plenty of clearance so I didn't hit it, but it was only about 3 inches deep. So small targets, very small targets, can report as being much deeper than they actually are. So just keep that in mind when you're digging these targets, that they can be quite shallow, even though the machine's telling us that they're 3, 4, 5 bars deep. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing I've discovered is that, well, complete opposite, as I mentioned there, very large targets can report being quite shallow, 1 or 2 bars deep, but in fact they're quite a bit deeper than that. And if I get a good target and it's reporting 1 or 2 bars deep, maybe 3 bars deep, and I'm down 6, 7 inches in the ground, and I'm not getting anything on my pinpointer or seeing anything, a lot of the time it's going to be much deeper, and it's going to be a big chunk of iron or aluminium or something like that, and usually that'll be enough for me to give up on that target and confirm to me that it's going to be deep rubbish of some sort. This plate here, I think this is off a clock or something. This reported on the machine as 2 bars deep, so about 4 inches deep, but it was actually more like about 6 or 7 inches deep by the time I got down to it. And the only reason I kept digging was because I was getting a signal with my pinpointer, but I did know at that point that it was larger than the machine thought it was. But I was in an area where I was looking for relics, so I kept digging, and I did find this old clock plate. So hopefully that information's of use to you. Hopefully those videos give you something to go on, and you can use this depth indicator as a very useful tool and as a guide. And just keep in mind that it is affected by lots of different factors, but don't let that put you off. Use it as it's intended, and use it as one of the tools to help you work out what you're digging and improve your chances of digging something good versus trash. So hopefully all of that's helped. Thanks for watching the video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Help me grow the channel. Leave a comment, always keen to hear what you've got to say. And catch you on the next video. Good luck with your hunting, and we'll see you next time.